Welcome to We Got Goals, a podcast by asweatlife.com on which we talk to high achievers about their goals. I'm Kristen Guile. I'm the Chief Content Officer of asweatlife.com. And today I am talking to Ashley Connell. She is the CEO and founder of the Prowess Project, which helps women return to work after a pause, not necessarily in tech. And what they do is they vet and they provide training and upskilling, and then they match women candidates with jobs based on their experience and behavior style compatibility. Ashley, how are you?
Oh, I am great. Thank you so much for having me. I am pumped.
I am super excited for this conversation because I think it's incredibly relevant for the time we are in now. We're recording this at the end of June, right at a time when people are re-entering their offices and going back to work in a lot of different capacities. So we have a lot to talk about, but first, I would love to hear your life story in your own words.
Yes, life story. I love that. So as a child, we can even start there. My parents were very young when they had me. So I bounced around from state to state, moving with them as they finished college. And then we found ourselves in just north of Dallas, grew up there, jumped over to University of Texas at Austin, and absolutely loved it. Had the best college experience. And then from there, I got a degree in PR, did one internship and was like, absolutely not. This is not for me. Failed all of my journalism and writing press releases, all of it. So then jumped into tech marketing, did that for about 15 years, started at a startup in Austin. They moved me over to London to open up their European office. I came back and then started Prowess Project about 7 years after that.
And so, what was the inspiration behind the Prowess Project?
Yes. So I realized as I was 15 years into this tech marketing career that, yes, I loved it. But as I was going through it, I had this background anxiety that I didn't even know that was happening. I couldn't articulate it. I couldn't identify it, but I was making decisions because of it. And I finally pinpointed that it was because I didn't know how I was going to continue this career that I had dropped everything for, and then also have children someday. So hopped online, found the horrific Harvard Business Review statistic that if a woman is out of the workforce for just 3 years raising children, she loses 37% of her total compensation power forever.
Forever. No amount of moves from company to company will make that up.
Well, yes, horrific. And this happens to 43% of women.
Wow.
And at the time it was 2018 and I was like, how is this still a problem? How is this still something that's going on? And with that, went out and talked to everyone who would listen, including hundreds of women who were in that scenario, they educated, experienced, took off 2-3 years from the workforce to raise their children, were trying to get back in. All they could get were unpaid internships. Right?
Unpaid internships aren't even cool anymore.
I didn't even know that was legal, right?
If you're in college or if you're working, you have to get paid. Otherwise, you're volunteering.
100%. And yet that's all they could get. So they would take it so that in hopes they would get to the next level. So diving deeper into that on why they had all these barriers, the first one that they said every single time was lack of confidence. And then because of the lack of confidence, they needed and couldn't piece together for themselves a clear path from home to hired. So that's what Prowess Project is. We are an integrated platform that takes women through training, jobs, and community while they're going through the training. We're gathering hundreds of data points on them, on their skills, their expertise, their behavior style, learning style, communication style, values. And that's how we match them up with jobs and teams. So employers give us that information too. We vet the employers as well, send the employers their top 3 matches based on data, and then they get to pick who they want to interview.
I love how niche this is and how specialized you are. And I think it feels like a very specific hole in the industry, but it's obviously one that's very close to your heart and that women everywhere are experiencing, and they really have to weigh those factors of how and when they want to make certain moves in their career versus how and when they want to start a family, if they've got that ability to, have kids right away. And I'm curious to dive a little bit deeper into that 37% stat. They lose 37% of their total compensation potential. Do you think that that's because they're really losing that much in training or in skill development? Is it because of the stigma of mothers returning to the workplace? I'd love for you to break that down a little bit.
It is absolutely the stigma. Sure, yes, technology moves fast. I agree. If you're out for 3 years, yeah, you may not know the latest feature in Zoom. You may not know the latest in Slack or Zapier, whatever it is, but those are easy things to learn. You do not lose all your professional know-how in 3 years. And if anything, during that time you're out, you are gaining so many skills that are transferable in the workforce, especially around running teams, that it well, in my opinion, well makes up for the fact that you've been out for 3 years. But what we're seeing time and time again, and what the data shows us, is there is this mommy penalty. So the working mother makes 66 cents on a white man's dollar. And it's because American workers typically believe that a woman who has children is less dedicated to her job.
I noticed you just said American right there. Is this different in other countries? Have you seen evidence of that in your research?
Absolutely. So Scandinavian companies, this is not the case. European, there are a lot of European countries where the gap is much, much closer. I think what I will say is, because we are a startup, because we are focused on America right now, and all of our talent and clients are nationwide, that is our focus. And so that is the data that I'm constantly looking at. And then, I mean, just look at COVID and how America handled that, and all of the 5.4 million women who were pushed out of the workforce because of lack of childcare. America has a spotlight on us right now, and we have opportunity to do better. And so I think we can.
All right, you've led me right into one of the questions I wanted to ask you when I was doing research to prep for this interview. And I'm sure you've seen this article from the New York Times. It was about a month ago about the Great She Session.
Yes.
And I'll summarize it real quick for our listeners who haven't, and we'll link to this in the show notes too. But as this article reports, women bore the brunt of caretaking, whether that was for children or other relatives during the pandemic. And as a result, millions of women were pushed out of their jobs or were first forced to downsize their careers. And that's made this really trendy name, the She Session, is what economists are calling it. So I'd love to hear, your thoughts on this She Session, this moment we're in right now, and how you've been thinking about it in this current moment as it relates to the Prowess Project.
Absolutely. So it's so incredibly sad. You cannot blame these women for choosing, or not choosing, that's the wrong word, being forced out of the workforce because it's, hey, taking care of my family or continuing to work. And as I'm having conversations with couples, even if the woman is the breadwinner, it was still unspoken that she would leave the workforce and not her male partner. And I think that has a ton to do with, gender roles and all sorts of things, completely different topic that we could get into. But what this means is more and more companies are going to want women, because we see that if you have greater gender diversity in leadership, that increases your profit by 15%. Yes. The world is becoming so data-driven, which the good part about that is there will be more and more data on gender diversity and why that is key. So I anticipate that this 5.4 million and growing women who were forced out in the next year or two, they're going to be coming back in. Our lives are going to get back to normal. We're already seeing it. And they're going to want to tiptoe back into the workforce or jump back in, but they're going to have different demands. They're going to want flexibility. They're going to want remote. They're going to want hybrid, in some way, different setups. And so I think that employers, if they want to attract and retain this female talent, they're going to have to adjust. And I think that we're going to see the ones that are forward thinking and do adjust will reap those benefits.
That 15% that you just cited, halfway into my very intense facial reaction, I realized we were recording a podcast and people couldn't hear me making a very shocked face. The 15% increase in profits by just having—
Isn't that insane?
Yeah, that's crazy. Why do you think that is?
So there is a ton of data on emotional intelligence and how women naturally have those skills. So of the 12 different aspects of emotional intelligence, women outperform men in 11 of them. And on the 12th, there is no difference.
Oh my God.
Yes. And we're also seeing that CEOs, they're all, again, data is showing that for CEOs and leadership, the number one quality that will keep the company moving forward is empathy. So based on those two data points alone, it is a no-brainer that the more women that we have in leadership and the more diverse and balanced we have these leadership teams, the more empathy, the more understanding, the more collaboration, thus more profit.
That's so interesting to me because empathy isn't a term you hear thrown around the business world very much. As far as stereotypes go, you think of, people needing to be ruthless or competitive, yes, or, wanting to gain that edge over someone else, whether that's someone internally that maybe you're up against for a promotion or another competitor in your industry. And empathy is not something that we talk about very much as it relates to business. And I feel like people would have seen it as a weekness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm glad to say that is starting to change, but the way I explain it is the workplace is like a urinal, but built for men.
What?
It is. Plain and simple. The workforce was not built with women in mind. And so we've created all of these norms that reward aggression, that reward that ruthlessness that you were just discussing. And now we're finding, as there's more women or feminine energy or whatever we want to call it, because I also don't think it's men versus women by any means. I think that those qualities are typically referred to as feminine. So that's kind of how I'm discussing it. But anyway, as we see more and more of those characteristics come into the workforce, and then we're looking at the data and seeing how those companies are growing, improving, getting faster, stronger, harder, there's no debate. There's no debate. If you want more money, you add more women to the workforce, or celebrate those, again, feminine qualities.
Let's take a pause on this conversation right now. I have some things that I want to come back to, but let's take a break and let's talk a little bit about goals. We prepped you for these questions, so I'm excited to hear what you're going to share with us. But let's start by talking about a big goal that you've had in the past and why it was important to you and how you got there. Anything at all.
So I was so excited about this question. So my goal that I had, that I achieved, in college, I studied abroad. I went over to Italy, spent a summer there, absolutely loved it, traveled all around Europe. I thought I was the luckiest girl in the absolute world, and I was. So came back and I'm trying to figure out what I want to do next or what I want my career to look like. And I said to myself, I want to work in Europe again, or live in Europe, work in Europe, etc. So here I was, first interview, like my first big girl job at a school. And I'm sitting there. I love this story. So I'm sitting there. We're supposed to meet at a coffee shop. Here I am in my, suit. I have like this briefcase. What? Like it just
was there anything in the briefcase?
No, actually that's false. There was one resume copy. Yes, I was just trying to be all the things. And the woman who was going to interview me never showed. And I was like, oh God, this sucks. Like, this is awful. She calls me back 2 hours later and she's like, oh my God, I am so sorry. I completely blew off this meeting. Instead of coffee, do you have an hour right now and we can go get margaritas? And I was, yeah, I was like, absolutely. Are you kidding me? Yes, I'm taking off these heels. I am taking off this suit, but I will be there for margaritas. So show up there. It's Jen Slavsky, my first boss out of school. She is just so phenomenal. I call her my real life fairy godmother because in that conversation, in that interview, I told her my goal of wanting to move back to Europe. And she made that happen 4 years into my job working with her. So she just kept giving me more and more opportunities as the startup was growing, especially just looking at the marketing in Europe. And I just kept saying yes. And like I said, 4 years later, I found myself running the marketing for Europe for Spiceworks.
That's amazing because from what I know anecdotally from friends who have wanted to have that same goal, it is not easy to move to Europe, especially if you need a certain visa or like if you're, it was great that you had the support of your company to go over there, but that doesn't mean it wasn't still a really long path. You said 4 years in.
Oh yeah, 4 years in. And I mean, it was a startup. They didn't know what they didn't know either about sending someone over to a different country. So there I am, no visa, just show up with my 2 suitcases moving over there. And every time I left the country, when I would get to border control, they would take me into a room for 30 minutes, grill me and be like, why are you still here? Until finally I got a visa. And I think I got it within days of being kicked out of the country.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What kind of cultural differences did you notice specifically like in the workforce as you were trying to open this office there? And how did you navigate that with your own company's culture versus like a London-based office culture?
Yes. So the number one thing, and I don't think that this is going to surprise anyone, especially in tech startups, it's work, business, business, business. Yes, there's fun, but it's work first. Oftentimes when we were doing business in Europe, it was play first, create those relationships, and then, okay, yes, I will work with you. And so that was a huge shift for me because I wanted to immediately dive into ideas and how we're going to work together and profits and numbers and ROI, blah, blah, blah. And I finally got the hint that, whoa, let's just get to know each other first, and then we can talk about if this makes sense. And so it was definitely a shift for me. But are you kidding me? That sounds super fun.
Well, it's a good thing you had the emotional intelligence to recognize what these future partners were trying to tell you.
Yes, definitely.
We operate with a very similar mentality at A Sweat Life. We always say we only do business with people and brands that we like. You know, no money or no partnership deal unless it's going to be like 7 figures, which we haven't had yet, but knock on wood, would be worth us yet. Would be worth us like suffering and feeling like we owe someone else like our full love and support when we don't get that back and we don't have that same respect in return. And I guess it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with building empathy into the workplace, and not just empathy, but relationship building. That's not purely transactional.
Absolutely. And I think we could take a couple pages out of their book. And I do think that we could slow down in the workforce and enjoy a lot more, because let's be honest, you want to work harder for the people you like.
Yes, exactly.
And we heard that over and over again when we were before we were building Prowess and talking to the hiring managers on what do they hate about the hiring process. And oftentimes it was that A, it took too long, but B, they didn't know if they actually meshed with that person that they just hired until 3-6 months into that person working there. Then, oh, look, there's not a personality fit. Oh, look, we're not having fun together. We don't like working together. See ya, that's a turnover. And it can be up to 250% of that person's salary to replace them.
Wow. And is that just because people are trying to project a certain image, or they're on their best behavior when they're interviewing or during those first few months on the job? What's causing that discrepancy?
I think there's that, but also if you look at the hiring process, look at the resume, just point blank. Does it say anything about your personality? Does it say anything about your soft skills? Does it say anything about what you would be like on the day-to-day? No.
And we're not trained to include that either. You're supposed to show that in a cover letter, which people traditionally hate.
Yes.
No one likes a cover letter.
No one likes a cover letter, which yeah, sadly is the case. I personally love a cover letter, but
I'm a writer. I love them.
Yeah. But now we're seeing this get even worse because of AI bots who are looking at resumes, scanning them for keywords, and then shortlisting based on that, not based on what that person has truly done and what that person's really like. And so I think that there's a huge disconnect and a huge reason why Prowess is trying to turn hiring on its head and really focus on, hey, those quote unquote soft skills are just as, if not more important than the hard skills, because again, you want to work with people you like.
Yeah. Let's fast forward to right now for that second part of our goals question. Tell me about a big goal that you're working on right now and why it's important to you and what steps you're taking to achieve it.
Yes. So our big goal right now is to place 1,000 women into jobs. So we are 2.5 years old. And as you can imagine with a startup, you don't open the doors and everything is set and you're off and running and have everything figured out.
Oh, yes.
So we started slow and we were really, really intentional about building what was right before scaling. And so now we're finally in this spot and have been for probably 3 to 6 months where we welcome the numbers. And so now just looking, hey, how do we get to 1,000? We're at about 200 now, but continue to offer the same, if not better, experience on both the talent and the employer side. And when I say better, I mean more personable. How do we do that? And so, yeah, that's our big goal. And our number one focus is being intentional in this problem. And hopefully it happens sooner than later.
Well, I have no doubt that you're about to enter a boom period for Prowess Project. I would love to finish this off with, we're big fans on asweatlife.com of actionable advice and tangible takeaways. So things that, someone reads a piece or listens to our interview and they walk away knowing how they can use what they just read or listened to achieve a goal. So from that angle, I would love to hear what advice you have for women who are re-entering the workforce right at this moment, whether that's from childcare related or, getting laid off during the pandemic, anything that you think women should be thinking about right now as they dust off those resumes.
Yes. Two main things. First, just take the next step, just the one next step that will get you there. I think oftentimes, and this is what we hear, the thought of getting back into the workforce and piecing together that journey is so overwhelming. And I mean, I just spent the past however long explaining all the barriers and what these women face. So I think breaking it up into pieces, and we try to help women do that at Prowess, but there's lots of other great resources out there too. So there's that. But I think for me, what has been the most helpful in life, but is also applicable for women who are returning, is tell everyone. I think oftentimes we're really ashamed or we're really nervous about what people are going to think when we say we have a goal or we want to go do something because we're not there yet. We're worried what they're going to think, and who cares? Like at the end of the day, most people, or at least your people, want to help.
Yeah.
And you never know who that person is going to know. You never know what's going to end up happening. And then I also believe if you just put stuff out in the universe will bring it back to you.
Very manifesting of you.
Yes, yes.
I think that's a great point though, because when I look back at my career, and I'm 31, I've had 4 major jobs in my life. And the only one that I got through a blind resume submission was my very first one out of grad school. And from there, it was just all about connections that I had built with the network around me. And I think those warm intros are so, so important. They're way more important than like clicking refresh on LinkedIn or wherever you're finding your jobs that are not Prowess Project right now.
Well, and I think you nailed it, because what we just both said is it's the network that helps you get the next job. Well, a lot of the women that we were talking to who are returning, they don't have that. They feel like they don't have that network anymore. I was asking one, why don't you just hop back on LinkedIn? No big deal. And she said, Ashley, going on LinkedIn feels like a graveyard of what my life could have been.
Oh,
right.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
Absolutely heartbreaking. And so that was a big aha for me, that community had to be a huge aspect of Prowess Project, because these women want people who are in their same mindset of want to continue their career, or are at least curious about it, and can help each other. Yeah. And so anyway, that's a huge part of Prowess that we are actively growing as well.
Are there any specific industries that you've seen through Prowess that have been especially accommodating or welcoming, or like really excited to hire women in this particular scenario?
Yes. So tech, but in particular tech startups. Okay. And I think why that is because early tech startups, they want people who are going to hit the ground running. And I think that their options are, hey, I don't have a massive budget, so I either hire someone straight out of school who is going to need that hand-holding, fair enough, or I hire someone who is returning, but I actually don't need them full-time. So at that same price, I can get them for 20 hours a week or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And so we're seeing more and more tech startups realizing like, oh, wow, that's a huge opportunity for us. And these women are workhorses because they're coming to Prowess nervous, looking for an employer. When an employer takes a chance on them, they have like loyalty for life. So yeah.
What about when women are searching for their next move? Are there any particular, trying to think of how to phrase this. Are there any particular signs that a company is going to be a good fit? Like what should they be looking for during the interview process to check the boxes and to know, okay, yes, I can see myself fitting in here and succeeding here and helping them move the needle? Or on the opposite end, any red flags that you should keep an eye out for? Maybe that's a little easier.
Yes. Well, I love that you asked this question, because with Prowess, one of our responsibilities that we have to the talent is to vet our employers as much as we're vetting our talent.
Nice.
So that happens through our own algorithm in our process, et cetera, et cetera. We brought in a behavior scientist to help us write all of this because it was so incredibly important that we get it right.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yes. So there's a lot that we look at in our vetting process, which can be as simple as the employer's day-to-day communication, how they describe their team, if there had been someone in the role before, why did they leave? How they describe the different projects that the team works on. Do they say, hey, we did this, or do they say, I did this? Little things like that are huge indicators on how collaborative that team or that employer is going to be. And I think for women, especially returners or women who are pivoting in their career or at this, crossroads, that collaboration is so key. Mm-hmm. And so that's a huge one. There are tons of others, but I think that is one of the ones that our team looks at and is a huge indicator of success.
I love that. Ashley, it has been so much fun to talk to you. You're going to get a follow-up email with me about more questions, because I think we have more to talk about. But before I let you go, can you tell us where we can find you and Prowess Project on the internet, and how we can stay up to date with what y'all are working on?
Yes, absolutely. So we are prowessproject.com. Hop over there. As far as me, best way to find me is on LinkedIn, just Ashley Connell. And on social, we are at Prowess Project on all social channels. So I welcome y'all. Please, please, please come over, say hi, join the community. We have a ton of open roles right now, which is really, really exciting. So yeah.
Awesome. Ashley, thank you so much for being on We Got Goals.
Yes, thank you. Really enjoyed it.
And thank you to Ryan Deffett for editing the audio of this podcast. Thank you to Ryan Barayuga for editing the video of this podcast. And thank you to you, wherever you are out there listening. We are so excited to share this interview, and you can find A Sweat Life at asweatlife.com or at A Sweat Life anywhere on the internet. We'll see you next time.